If you had asked me a few years ago if I'd ever walk away from a relationship, I would have told you no. I was the kind of guy who believed in sticking things out, no matter what. But life has a funny way of turning things upside down. I thought I had it all figured out. I married Lily, the woman I thought I was meant to be with. We built a life together. But somewhere along the way, I started to feel like something was missing, not just from our relationship, but from my own life. I didn't even realize it at first. It was like I was in a fog, just going through the motions, work, home, weekends. But then, the doubt started creeping in. The question, is this it? Is this all I'm going to be? And that's when I started wondering, was I truly happy? Was she? I guess you could say. I was too scared to face the truth. But eventually, I couldn't ignore it anymore. Something had to change. But how do you tell someone you love that you're not the person they need you to be? I guess that's the question. How do you make that decision? And even more importantly, how do you live with it? I've always had big dreams. Growing up, I didn't have much in terms of money or status. But I had something else. Something that felt bigger: ambition. I wanted to make something of myself. I wanted to be the kind of man who doesn't just survive, but thrives. But somewhere along the way, I let go of those dreams. I chose security. I told myself it was enough. And when Lily and I got together, I just thought, this was it. This was the life I'd worked for. No more chasing big goals, no more risk. Just comfort. But that choice? It started eating away at me. And I didn't even know it at first. I kept telling myself, I'm fine. I've got a good job. I've got a house. I've got Lily. But deep down, I knew something was missing. Something in me had been left behind. The thing was, I started to feel like I wasn't enough. Not for her, not for myself. I had this nagging feeling that Lily wasn't fully happy either. We'd have these moments, long silences. The kind where you don't know whether you're just tired or whether you're thinking about everything you wish you could say, but can't. And then there were the little signs. Lily started changing too. She got quieter. She wasn't as present. It was like she was waiting for something. I didn't know what it was, but I felt like I should have known. And that's when the suspicion crept in. I started wondering, am I enough for her? What was I missing? Was she waiting for something else? And the worst part? I couldn't even ask her. I was too afraid of the answer. You know, when you're in a relationship, sometimes you stop realizing how much you're compromising. You stop noticing how many little things you're giving up until one day, you wake up and realize you've given up everything. And that's where I was. Lily and I, we were comfortable, yes. But that's all we were anymore. Comfortable. We knew each other's schedules, knew what food the other liked, knew exactly how to fill the silence without saying much at all. But somewhere along the way, comfort became complacency. I'd compromised my own dreams for security. And for what? To keep a stable home? To not rock the boat. But in doing so, I stopped being me. I stopped being the guy who dreamed about changing the world. And I started becoming someone I didn't recognize. I had been compromising little by little. My career, my passions, my goals. I stayed in a job I didn't care about because it paid the bills. I told myself it was enough. I told myself it was all for her. But eventually, I realized I was losing everything, my dreams, my sense of self. And I wasn't sure Lily was getting any of the things she truly needed, either. We were both just surviving. And I didn't know how to fix it anymore. The decision wasn't easy. I loved her. Hell, I still love her. But I realized something. Being in a relationship isn't just about making the other person happy. You have to make yourself happy too. I kept running that conversation over and over in my head. What if she gets angry? What if she thinks I don't love her? But deep down, I knew that wasn't it. It wasn't about love. I still loved her. It was about the fact that we were both stuck. Stuck in a life that wasn't really ours. I kept asking myself, do I want to be with her because I love her, or because I'm scared of being alone? I practiced what I was going to say in front of the mirror, over and over. But every time, the words felt more and more difficult to say. And the more I practiced, the more terrified I became. I knew it had to be done, but I didn't know how to face it. But then I realized, the longer I stayed, the worse it would get. Not just for me, but for her too. I had to do this. I had to be honest. Even if it broke both our hearts. I thought breaking up would be easier than this. I thought I'd feel relief, like I'd finally made the right decision. But all I felt was empty. I didn't know who I was anymore, or what I was supposed to do next. I didn't expect it to hurt this much. The silence in the house. The way the walls felt empty. It was like I didn't just lose her, I lost myself. The person I used to be, the guy who dreamed and believed in something more. Now I wasn't sure who that guy even was. I kept asking myself, was I wrong? Should I have tried harder? Should I have done more? But then I started realizing something. Maybe this was necessary. Maybe we needed this space to find who we truly were, to find the people we were meant to be. I couldn't stay in a life that wasn't mine. And neither could she. I'll never forget the first time I heard Emily talk about her dream after the breakup. It wasn't a conversation I was expecting. We'd been separated for a few months by then, and I'd seen her a couple of times, but I didn't really see her until that day. She was sitting across from me at a coffee shop, casually talking about the things she'd been up to, work, life, just the usual stuff. But then, almost out of nowhere, she mentioned something that completely took me by surprise. She'd enrolled in a photography course. Now, Emily had always loved photography. I knew that. It was one of those things we talked about, casually, when we were together. She'd always said it was something she wanted to do but didn't have time for. But hearing her actually say that she was taking a course, that she was going after it, hit me in a way I didn't expect. It was like a veil lifted, and I suddenly saw her differently. I saw her potential, the one I had always known was there, but somehow had never really seen clearly. At first, I didn't know what to feel. I mean, I was proud of her, sure. But a part of me, honestly, a part one didn't even want to admit, felt a little threatened. I felt this knot in my stomach. Why? Because, if I'm being honest, I had always secretly hoped Emily would depend on me, that I could be the one to make her dreams come true. It sounds selfish now, but back then, I think I was more concerned about my own role in her life than I was about her happiness. I remember asking her, why now? Why this? And Emily just looked at me and smiled. Because I can't wait anymore, she said. I've put this off long enough. She went on to tell me that she'd spent so many years trying to be the perfect partner, trying to make sure everything was perfect between us, that she had buried her own dreams. She'd kept them on the back burner, thinking there would be a better time, a better moment to finally go after them. But the truth, as she admitted, was that there never was going to be the perfect time. The time was now. After everything we'd been through, after our breakup, after all the pain, she realized something incredibly powerful. She was done waiting for permission. Done waiting for everything to line up perfectly. She was done sacrificing herself for the perfect relationship. She was going to step into her own light, even if it meant stepping away from what we had. That's when the reality hit me like a ton of bricks. This wasn't just about her pursuing a hobby. This wasn't just a fun project. This was Emily taking charge of her own life. It was her deciding, once and for all, that she deserved the same level of attention, care, and dedication she had always given to me, to her own dreams. At that moment, I realized I had been holding her back. Not intentionally, but out of my own fears, my own insecurities. I had never really given her the space to fully explore who she was apart from me. I had been so caught up in our relationship, and what I thought it should be, that I hadn't noticed she was quietly sacrificing her true self. She had given up pieces of herself for us, for me. And it was only when we separated that she realized she needed to take them back. Over the next few months, Emily threw herself into photography. It wasn't just a hobby anymore, it was a part of her identity. She started sharing her photos online. People started noticing. She even booked her first paid gig doing event photography. It was incredible to watch. I watched her grow in ways I hadn't expected. I saw her begin to glow, her confidence building with each new shot she took, with each new success she had. She wasn't just learning how to use a camera, she was learning how to believe in herself. She was learning how to take risks, to chase what made her come alive, and most importantly, to stop waiting for permission to live her life. And as I watched this, something unexpected happened. I realized that I had been doing the exact same thing. I had been holding myself back, too. For years, I had stayed in a comfort zone that didn't really challenge me. I had let myself believe that I could only grow within the confines of a relationship, that I could only define myself by my role as her partner. But when I saw Emily chasing her dream with such determination, something inside me clicked. I realized I didn't have to wait either. The truth is, I had never fully appreciated how much Emily had sacrificed for me. Not in a resentful way, but in a way that I had simply never noticed. She had set aside her own dreams to make our life work, to make me happy, to make sure I was fulfilled. And now, she was getting that back. She was taking ownership of her life. And I was both amazed by her bravery and inspired to do the same for myself. What I realized, as Emily continued to thrive in her photography career, was that our relationship had been stifling us both. Not because of who we were, but because we had both gotten so wrapped up in each other that we had forgotten about the people we were before we met. Emily had always been so much more than just my girlfriend. She was a creative force, a passionate individual with dreams of her own. And I had neglected to see that. I had become so wrapped up in my own fears about love, about success, and about security that I hadn't given her the freedom she needed to soar. And in return, I had forgotten that I, too, had dreams that didn't revolve around us or her, but around me and who I could become when I wasn't limiting myself. So, here's the twist. Watching Emily take the reins of her own life and pursue her dream didn't just change her, it changed me too. It made me realize that love, true love, isn't about being everything to someone else. It's about encouraging them to be everything to themselves. It's about supporting them while they chase their dreams, even if those dreams take them places you can't follow. And in doing so, you create the space for both of you to grow. Emily's pursuit of her dream wasn't just a twist in her story. It was the twist in mine. Because the truth is, she had already been showing me the path to growth all along. I just hadn't been paying attention. And now, I saw it clearly. I needed to take responsibility for my own growth, just as she was doing for hers. We were both learning, both becoming the people we were meant to be. Separate, but better. And who knows? Maybe one day our paths would cross again. But for now, we were both finally walking our own paths, and that was enough. I knew that part of my healing process was going to involve focusing on myself. But what I didn't expect, what caught me completely off guard, was watching Emily go through her own transformation. You see, for years, I had seen Emily as this amazing, talented woman, but somewhere along the way, I think she'd lost her spark. We'd both been so caught up in the routine of our lives, work, paying bills, keeping up with everything, that we both fell into a kind of quiet resignation. We were comfortable, yes, but we were also stagnating. And I had noticed the little signs. She'd talk about her dreams, her passions, the things she wanted to do before life got busy. But they always felt like someday dreams, never the today kind of dreams. I assumed she was happy. Or at least content. But after the breakup, I started seeing her in a different light. About 3 months after we parted ways, I ran into Emily at a cafe. She looked different, lighter somehow. Her eyes had this fire in them that I hadn't seen in a long time. I didn't know it then, but it was the start of a transformation for her, too. She told me she had signed up for a photography course. She had always loved taking pictures, but it had always taken a backseat to everything else in her life. She said it was something she'd always wanted to do but never had the courage to pursue. But something clicked for her after our breakup. It was like she'd realized, maybe for the first time, that her life wasn't going to magically align with her dreams unless she took action. At first, I didn't know how to feel about it. I was proud of her, but I also felt this pang of jealousy, this feeling like she was finally living the life I always wanted her to live, but without me in it. I couldn't help but wonder, why hadn't she done this with me? Why had we both been so stuck? But that was the thing. The more she talked about her class, the more I realized how much she had been holding back, just like I had. She hadn't been waiting for me to give her permission to chase her dreams. She'd been waiting for herself to believe she was worthy of that kind of freedom. And in a way, I had been waiting for the same thing. Emily went all in. She started posting her photography online, building a following. She was taking on freelance projects. It wasn't easy, but it was real. She was carving out her space in the world on her own terms, and it was like watching a flower bloom after years of being kept in the shade. She began traveling more, capturing the world around her. I saw her joy returning, the same joy that had been missing when we were together. She was finding herself again, but this time it was for her, not for anyone else. And in the middle of all this, something profound started to happen in me too. Watching Emily chase after her dream, watching her live her life with such purpose and passion, made me realize something critical. I wasn't the only one who had been holding myself back. She hadn't been waiting for me to change, she'd been waiting for herself to believe in her own worth. Just like I had been waiting for myself to step into my own potential. I realized then that our relationship had never failed because we didn't love each other. It had failed because we had both lost sight of who we were outside of the relationship. Emily had put her dreams on hold for years, and I had sacrificed parts of myself just to maintain the status quo. But what I didn't see at the time was that by letting go, we were both giving ourselves the opportunity to reclaim those pieces of ourselves that we had hidden away. And Emily's pursuit of her dream was the proof of that. For the first time, I saw her as the person I always knew she could be, unstoppable, passionate, and unapologetically herself. And what was even more beautiful was that I wasn't the one who had to fix her or help her along. She had done it all herself. And that's when I realized, true love is not about making someone else's dreams come true. It's about supporting them as they go after their own. It's about standing by their side, even when their journey takes them down paths you can't follow. I started to understand that the more Emily pursued her own dreams, the more she became the person I had always hoped she could be. And that's when it hit me, she didn't need me to be her everything. She needed me to be supportive, yes, but not to complete her. She needed space to find her own voice, just as I had needed the same. And by her pursuing her own passions, she was becoming the woman I had always loved, but also the woman I had never fully appreciated, because I hadn't seen her potential through the lens of her own journey. The twist wasn't just about me realizing my own potential, it was about watching Emily realize hers. Her journey of self-discovery was so inspiring to me that it changed how I looked at my own life. My own choices. She had found the courage to step into her own light, and in doing so, she made me realize I could do the same. So, as I sat there listening to her talk about her new projects, her future goals, her new sense of purpose, I understood something incredibly important. Love, real love, is not about being everything for someone else. It's about encouraging them to become everything for themselves. I had spent so much time thinking love was about sacrifice, about losing yourself for the other person. But the truth was, love was about inspiring the other person to find their own dreams, their own path, and to have the courage to follow it, even if it meant walking away from the things that had kept them stuck. Emily's pursuit of her dream didn't just change her, it changed me. It reminded me that love isn't about possession. It's about freedom. Freedom to grow. Freedom to chase what you're passionate about. And in the end, it was that freedom, that space for growth, that allowed both of us to become the people we were always meant to be. I remember the first time I saw Lily after the breakup. I wasn't sure what to expect. I had this image in my head of what it would be like, awkward, maybe even a little bitter. I thought I'd see her and feel regret or sadness, maybe even a sense of what have I done. But instead, when I saw her, something totally unexpected happened. I saw her differently. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a deep sense of peace. It was like seeing a new version of her, stronger, more confident, and somehow more alive than I remembered. It was as if the weight that had been pressing down on both of us had been lifted, and I realized then that we were no longer two people stuck in a life that didn't fit. We had both broken free in our own ways. I wasn't the same person anymore, and neither was she. I noticed the little changes in her. She had this energy about her, this confidence that had been missing when we were together. I'd always admired her, but seeing her this way, seeing her stand tall and unapologetically be herself, it made me realize something. I hadn't just walked away from her. I had walked away from a version of me that I didn't even know was holding me back. But it wasn't just me who had grown. Lily had changed too. When we were together, I couldn't see it, but now it was clear. Lily had been holding herself back in the same way I had. She had been so focused on us, on keeping things stable, on making our life together work, that she had sacrificed parts of herself. I could see it now. She had spent years trying to be what she thought I needed her to be, just like I had tried to be the man I thought she needed. But that wasn't real. And it wasn't fair to either of us. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that the changes in both of us weren't just about us as a couple. They were about us as individuals. We had both needed the space to grow, to become the people we were meant to be. Outside the confines of a relationship that was, at the time, holding us both back. That was the turning point for me. It wasn't about blaming each other or thinking that one person was at fault. It was about recognizing that we both had a journey to take. A journey that didn't require the other person to be everything. A journey where we could be ourselves, and still support each other in the process. I think that's when I really understood the power of personal growth in a relationship. Sometimes, we think that love is about doing everything together, about growing at the same pace, about being in sync all the time. But I've learned that true growth, real, lasting change, often comes when two people take the time to grow separately. To go through their own transformations, and to become the best versions of themselves. At that moment, I knew that our relationship hadn't ended because we had failed. It had ended because we both needed space to grow, to rediscover who we were. And the best part? We were doing it. We were both on that journey, and I could feel it in the way we interacted now. There was no pressure, no expectations. Just two people who had learned the hard way that they needed to be true to themselves first before they could be true to anyone else. What I had thought of as a loss, the breakup, the separation, was actually the beginning of something so much bigger. It wasn't just the beginning of my journey. It was the beginning of hers too. I saw her becoming the woman I had always known she could be. A woman who was independent, confident, and unapologetically pursuing her dreams. And honestly, I was proud of her. More than I ever could have been when we were in that relationship. I realized then that our love for each other didn't end because we broke up. It transformed. It evolved. I began to understand that, in a way, our growth wasn't separate. It wasn't about me or her anymore. It was about both of us becoming who we needed to be separately, so that we could possibly come back together one day as the people we were meant to be. But what I realized most profoundly was this. You can't grow together if you're both stifling your own potential for the sake of staying together. Sometimes, growth requires space. It requires separation. It's not about tearing something down. It's about giving it the room to breathe so that it can reach its full potential. We had both learned that. And even though I didn't know where our future would lead, I understood one thing for sure. The relationship we had wasn't the end. It was just a chapter in a much bigger story, a story about us becoming who we were meant to be on our own end. Maybe one day, together again. But this time, it would be a different kind of love. A love that came from two people who had learned to grow, not just together, but within themselves. When I made the decision to let go, I thought I was walking away from something. From a relationship that no longer fit, from the life I thought I was supposed to have. I thought that would be the hardest part, saying goodbye. But what I didn't expect, what I couldn't have known at the time, was that letting go was actually the beginning of something much more meaningful. I thought breaking up meant losing something precious. It felt like I was losing a part of myself. I felt like I was losing Lily, losing the life we had built together. But over time, I started to see things differently. I realized that I hadn't lost anything at all. Instead, I'd given both of us the chance to rebuild, not from the ashes of our past, but from a place of honesty and clarity. I wasn't losing the person I loved. I was freeing both of us to find out who we truly were, outside the boundaries of that relationship. I've come to understand that sometimes, the hardest decisions lead to the most rewarding outcomes. It wasn't easy, hell, it was gut-wrenching at times, but walking away was the right thing to do. Not just for me, but for her, too. Lily and I had both been stuck in a life that no longer fit, a life where we were trying to be what we thought the other person needed instead of being who we really were. We were both living for the other person's version of happiness, but never really living for ourselves. And that's when I realized that love, true love, is not about holding on to someone because you're afraid of being alone. It's about knowing when to let go so that both people can grow into who they are meant to be. Sometimes you need to step away from something that's comfortable, even safe, in order to make room for something better. The truth is, the life I had with Lily wasn't the end of my story. It was just one chapter. And when I closed that chapter, I opened myself up to a whole new adventure. I started pursuing the dreams I'd buried for so long. I started working on my own happiness, rediscovering parts of myself that I had forgotten. I took risks again. I reached for the goals that once seemed impossible. And slowly, I began to feel alive again. I started to understand that the man I was becoming was the man I was always meant to be. I stopped chasing the version of success that wasn't mine, and started chasing the one that was true to me. And the funny thing is, once I started doing that, once I started focusing on myself and my own growth, I started seeing the world in a different light. The things that once seemed impossible started to feel possible. My energy shifted. I became a magnet for new opportunities, new connections, and a deeper sense of peace within myself. As for Lily, well, I heard from her a few months after the breakup. She was different too. She had taken the time to figure out what she wanted, what she needed. And in a strange way, seeing her flourishing, pursuing her own dreams, made me happy. I realized we were both on our own journeys now. And sometimes you have to go through a storm to find the clarity you need to really see the beauty in the calm. We may never go back to what we once had, but that doesn't mean we didn't give each other something valuable. We taught each other what it means to grow, to be free, and to be honest with ourselves. And that's something I'll never regret. The real happy ending, though, is not just that I found peace or that Lily found peace. The real happy ending is that we both found ourselves. We both became the people we were meant to be. And in doing that, we opened the door to new possibilities, both in our own lives and in future relationships. We realized that the key to a happy relationship, whether with someone else or even with ourselves, is knowing when to let go, when to change, and when to embrace the journey that lies ahead. If there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that the most important relationship you'll ever have is the one you have with yourself. If you can't be true to who you are, you'll never be able to truly love anyone else. And if you're holding on to something just because you're afraid of the unknown, you might be robbing yourself of the life you were meant to live. So, to anyone out there who's going through something similar, who feels stuck or afraid to make a change, I want you to know this: change is hard, but it's also the only way to grow. Letting go isn't a failure. It's a step forward. And sometimes, the hardest decisions lead to the most beautiful outcomes. I didn't just walk away from a relationship. I walked into my future. And I'm glad I did. Because now, I know that I'm not just living, I'm truly alive. And that's the kind of happiness worth fighting for. You know, looking back, it's easy to think of the breakup as something negative, as a failure. And for a long time, I did. I saw it as the end of a chapter, something I couldn't undo. But the more I think about it, the more I realize sometimes letting go isn't a failure. Sometimes it's the only way to find who you're truly meant to be. For a long time, I thought that love was about holding on, about making it work no matter what, even if you lose yourself in the process. But I've learned that real love isn't about holding on tight to someone out of fear of being alone. It's about giving each other the freedom to grow. It's about recognizing that we both deserve to be the best versions of ourselves. And sometimes that means letting go. Letting go of old expectations, of comfort, of a version of a relationship that was only holding us back. I think I spent too long thinking that if I could just fit into the mold of what Lily wanted me to be, or what society expected of me, everything would be perfect. But that's not how it works. You can't make someone else's happiness your whole world, because if you do, you'll lose yourself in the process. You need to know who you are, what you stand for, and what makes you truly happy, before you can ever be in a place to truly give to someone else. I used to think that love meant sacrificing who you were for the other person. I thought it meant putting all your own needs aside, just to keep the peace. But the truth is, love can't thrive in that environment. It becomes suffocating. And while you're trying to be everything for someone else, you're slowly becoming nothing to yourself. And that's the real loss. I realized that the moment I started prioritizing my own happiness, my own growth, and my own dreams, that was the moment I gave myself the chance to love truly. Not just someone else, but myself. And when I learned to love myself, it gave me the courage to let go of something that wasn't working, so that we both could move forward into something better. And yes, it's scary. It's terrifying to think that the life you've built might fall apart, that you might be left alone. But here's the thing, nothing really ends. It just transforms. Our relationship transformed into something else. It might not have been the love story I imagined, but it was the story I needed. I learned that sometimes, the hardest thing to do is exactly what you need to do for your own happiness. It's about realizing that love isn't about holding on too tightly, it's about giving each other the room to breathe and grow. If you're in a relationship right now that feels like it's holding you back, if you're constantly putting aside your own needs, your own dreams, maybe it's time to ask yourself, are you really living, or are you just existing? And if the answer is the latter, maybe it's time to let go. Sometimes, letting go isn't losing something. It's giving both people the space to become who they were always meant to be. I know it's not easy. But I promise you, on the other side of that fear, there's freedom. And in that freedom, you might just find your way back to the kind of love you've always dreamed of. Not the kind of love that ties you down, but the kind that lifts you up. The kind that inspires you to be the best version of yourself. So you can truly give all of yourself to someone else, without losing who you are in the process. So if you're holding on to something out of fear, or out of obligation, just remember this. Love isn't about being someone else's answer. It's about being your own. And when you do that, you create space for the kind of love that will last. The kind that grows. And the kind that, ultimately, makes both people better for it. And that, my friend, is the real takeaway. True love doesn't come from holding on. It comes from letting go and trusting that everything will work out, because, in the end, it always does.